we have decided that we are going to do an experiment to find the ultimate dueling sword.
What is the sword when pitted against any other weapon will win most of the time, assuming each practitioner is of equal skill.
Equal skill, and of course we're not quite of equal skill in every single thing we do, but we're fairly comparable.
Close enough.
So what is a dueling weapon? Let's talk about this. A dueling weapon is a weapon that's only going to be used against one other combatant in a situation where they're on equal footing. No one's being surprised.
No armor.
No armor. We're dressed in, you know, more historically accurate, but basically what we're dressed in now, which is not much fabric. So it's dueling another person with no outside help, trying to wound or kill. For this experiment, we're not going to be using an offhanded weapon. It's going to be simply the sword, as pure as it can get. So here are the contenders that we have chosen for the first round of this testing. We have the Longsword. We all know it. We love it. This is everybody's favorite. I'm kidding. We also have the Katana. Now, the Katana obviously is the internet's favorite weapon. We decided we wanted to add it. It's not a European weapon. It is the only non-European weapon we are using here, and that is mostly because we don't have sparring-safe versions of any other weapons from any other cultures. Once we get them, we'll happily add them in. But this is what we've got for now. We also have the Messer, which was the favorite of peasants. Not really peasants, it still costs a lot of money, but you get it. So this is like the everyman sword. We're adding this one in instead of the arming sword because the arming sword was mostly used with an offhand of some kind, either a buckler or a shield, so it didn't make much sense to add it in as a 1v1 weapon, but the Messer was used in 1v1 situations, so we're adding in the Messer.
They also kind of fill the same niche. It's a short sword with not particularly complex guards, and it'd be basically testing the same thing twice.
Yeah, same thing twice. We have the Rapier. This is obviously considered the dueling weapon.
We'll find out.
No, I'm just saying, like, of its time, it was the dueling weapon. So this was the civilian dueling weapon, was very popular in the Renaissance, so it obviously is gonna be one of them. We have the Dueling Saber. So this is a later period kind of creation. This is not a cavalry saber. This is not a military saber. This is specifically made for dueling. So we're throwing it in there. It is my favorite weapon. And then we have the Small Sword, which was the courtly sword. It was as much fashion accessory as it was dueling weapon, but
One
it also
could argue the ultimate evolution of the dueling sword.
The ultimate, yeah. This is the ultimate quote unquote evolution of the dueling sword. Now we also have the Montante here, the great sword.
The big
and
guy.
We're not gonna include it in our testing for a number of reasons. Number one, it's unsafe. It's unsafe. It hurts to get hit with, and it wouldn't make sense. We don't have padded versions of all the other ones, and it's not a true test with padded stuff. We've talked about this before. Padded weapons are fun to get kind of an idea, but this is supposed to be a more serious test, and we don't think that we could do that with padded weapons, and it's not safe to do this with this. But the other thing is, this is barely a sword. This is mostly a polearm.
This is a pole. All of these are sidearms that if you needed to get into a fight, you'd have on you.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be carrying this in the streets unless you're doing a particular thing that requires it. So it's not like versus like. This is a polearm. This isn't a sidearm.
Like Clark said, you know, the sidearm is something you have when you lose your primary weapon. This is the primary weapon. This should go up against the spear, not against a dueling weapon. So disqualified.
DQ. Different weight class.
Different weight class. With that said, in this video, we're gonna go ahead and have the Longsword run the gauntlet of all of the other competitors, and in each episode, we'll have a different weapon run the gauntlet to see who comes out on top the most. Let's get started. So we did rapier versus longswords for the first part of this. How do you feel that the longsword stood up to the rapier?
The rapier was basically better in every way.
It's longer, it has better hand protection.
It moves a lot faster too.
For a dueling situation, because remember, this is not to test what is the best weapon. This can do things that this can't do. I would rather have this if I was fighting anywhere other than the streets.
Yeah.
Right? The streets! Because it can do so much more versatile. But in a duel, one-on-one versus another person, I wouldn't want to go up against this. It's not that this longsword did nothing.
Yeah.
And you can't ignore it.
The big problem was the distance of engagement, because this is already a longer sword. It's also in one hand, so it's even longer there.
Yeah.
But the big thing is because your hand was never an option the entire time, with longsword, you usually threaten the hands to close them in to give you access to a deep target.
So
I have nothing to threaten you with.
I can stay here all day and I'm not worried.
Like, he's hitting me.
He can't hit my hands.
I have to get
his.
this close,
Yeah.
where he's deep target and I'm shallow still.
I found the best way to go up against the rapier was for when you had that forward to try and see if I could press down and then cover the incoming blow and then come in. So I had to think 3 steps ahead to even close.
Yeah.
I think that it's pretty clear from the fencing footage we did. Now granted, like, it's not to say you could not win against a rapier, but it was definitely stacked in the rapier's favor.
The only thing I thought that would longsword had going for it was if I could get in and control the bind and lock you out, but you have no reason to bind me. It's so much easier for you to disengage that it was almost useless even trying.
I honestly, this is a shocker for me because I thought the longsword was going to come into its own if we crashed. But when we crashed, no, go ahead. When we crashed, I had another hand free. It was a huge deal. There was about 3 times where we got in close and I'm like, oh, I'm screwed. And then I found this and I found some sort of stab when the longsword was still bound up on itself. So that was a shocker to me.
You can also disengage a lot faster because usually I was thinking if I could get a parry, an actual parry, and I could shoot down. But even then, just from going from here, you can still move so much faster.
Oh man, yeah, it was so much faster. It wasn't easy. It's not like this was a cakewalk, but it had an edge.
Yeah, plus the hands. You could threaten so much more, so much sooner. I thought it would be more even than it was.
I think we need to move on to the next one.
Yeah.
So here we go, round 2. So we just did longsword versus saber, and it was actually kind of surprising.
Yeah.
I kind of assumed the longsword was going to have more teeth.
I thought so too. It feels like when the hand shot isn't an option, the longsword's always punching up because our effective range is still less.
Because you've got your body squared and I'm bladed, and my hand is protected.
I can't target your hand in any way.
I effectively have more range, and I can pick off the hands.
This also cuts about, it can work in Des so much faster because it whips so much faster.
Because it's a saber, it cuts really effectively. I would say, and this is going to be something maybe we test later, this is a dueling saber, dueling test. A trooper weight saber, I'm not sure I'd want to do against a longsword because it's not quite as fast.
It also has less hand
protection,
which is, I think that's the biggest deciding factor on why the longsword is working from behind.
If this was a Polish saber, for instance, I wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah, I
It'd
agree.
be basically a messer with a curve. So with that said, what did you feel when you were fencing with that?
The big shock to me is that when I'm facing the longsword, I don't feel like you have any effective threats that I can't deal with. Whereas if we swap, my hands are so open. If I tried and bait you in, my hands are so open the whole time. I can't work very much.
Something that I noticed between this one and last one is you have much more experience with two-handed weapons, and I had much more experience with one-handed weapons. And I thought that might be a factor. Like maybe it would play in so that when I was fencing you with a one-handed, it would be like a lot different. It is different. I did get you more when you're doing one-handed, but not by as much as we would have thought.
Yeah, I would expect. I agree. I had the same thought that when we swapped, that it would still favor you more, and that we aren't seeing that, even though I have less experience with single-handed swords.
Similarly to what you said, because I am more experienced with one-handed weapons and I am less experienced with two-handed weapons, I thought that maybe you wouldn't get me quite as much. When you had the rapier and I had the longsword, I thought that perhaps I would survive more, but it was about the same.
Even then,
I was still getting tagged all the time.
The one-handed weapon is edging out more often when either of us are using it, which wasn't what I was expecting.
Yeah.
I think the complex hand protection is really the deciding factor.
Yeah, given the fact, I think what's going to happen is this is going to really come down to what is it going to do against non-complex hand protection. I think it's going to be the big deal.
Because at the end of the day, it all comes down to effective range, and if I can't target your hands, your effective range is so much more than mine. If I can target your hands, then it'll be a whole different game.
Let's get back to it.
That's my theory. Yeah, I think it's gonna be either you can do a stop for us or
you're dead. Yeah, there's no parry. one was interesting because it was not what I expected at all.
Yeah, this one was a lot closer.
I expected this one just to dominate, but the problem we ran into is that this can't parry this at all, and this will blow through everything.
At the same time, this can't parry that. Neither can parry each other.
It was double city. Really, if we were actually to do this, I think we'd both walk away.
Yeah.
I think we'd be like, let's have a duel, then be like, let's not do this. Because we just double.
Or I think that we would both, because a lot of the hits we got were doubles, but neither were particularly bad. I think we'd both get wounded and be like, we're done now.
There was a couple of rough ones, but like, so the thing was, when we were both fencing cautiously, the doubles were all like skips.
Yeah.
But when we were like, I want a hit, it was like death.
Double, yeah.
It was death.
Neither can parry each other, so you both got hit.
Again, coming back to, because I have more experience with, I've actually Olympically fenced, and you would think that would mean I'm much better. It wasn't by a lot. Mm-hmm. It was double city. Now we have a friend who probably could get away with this, but he's also a million feet tall, and it's all he's done since he was 12, and that might just be that he's better. Built different. But that doesn't mean for the average person. I think that the small sword, and that's kind of what this, if we go to the history of this was designed to fight other small swords. Yeah. Nothing else. Nothing else.
These two in particular, I think, was some of the most uninteractive fencing I've ever seen. Because neither can parry each other. If you even try, it's a waste.
It was all naked attacks.
Yeah.
Naked attacks and fades. That's all it was. Yeah. I don't think we need to discuss this too much because it was just so obvious from what happened on camera. Yeah. I don't even know who came out ahead.
I have no idea.
I think it was a wash. Mm-hmm. All right, let's keep moving. I feel like we're about to see a shift in the battle.
Agreed.
Sucked. That was the most frustrating by a lot.
What I was saying earlier about having the difference in length is made up for by Hand Pro. This doesn't have that and it's shorter.
Yep.
No shot.
No shot. The Messer is not the weapon to take the. I'm sure people can do it. Like if we were really really good at grappling, even getting into grappling range, like we got it once. I don't think.
No, it's not happening.
No, the Messer lost.
We got like maybe one clean apiece, and even then it wasn't that clean.
Yeah, it wasn't that clean. Okay, moving on.
No shot.
You wanted this. Could have just taken your hands, but I wanted to see if I could do a deep target. I'm torn because I think I can hit your hands every time, but I also want to pull off other techniques. In the spirit of this, I should do what's effective.
Take what you can get.
Do what's effective.
You may have broken through the last parry.
Hilt.
In that case, it was you.
Yeah. So one thing I thought about is that the katana is a one and two hand weapon, and I'm better at one hand weapons. I don't think this is gonna work, but I think it's valid if we try. We're gonna give the katana a couple of extra tries to see if this is somehow more viable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Benefit of learning from watching you do it, but even then it's not very successful.
I'm still trying to not destroy hands all the time.
Just do hands all the time.
I'm trying to play a little bit.
Stop doing that. Do hands all the time.
Yeah.
Do what's effective.
My opening thought was, I thought it'd be similar to the Messer, but do a little bit better. It did the exact same.
It was just too easy to pick up the hands. It was way too easy.
I will say, this Suba in particular is really small. They have some that are bigger, and there were a couple where if I had like a hair bit more guard, I could have parried them, maybe.
But I own a lot of katanas, and this is not unreasonable for the Suba.
It's not.
In fact, I have. I would say that it's fairly standard for a Suba.
Yeah.
Now you could get into like, would this be the sword that you would use against? But we're trying to find the ultimate dueling sword.
Yeah, no.
And the one that we decided to use was the traditional, the katana that everybody thinks about.
Yeah.
Katana.
28 inches.
Yep, 28 inches.
Standard.
And it just got creamed.
Yeah.
This doesn't make it a bad sword.
Just
you
a
have
bad
to say that.
duel. It's not the ultimate
Dueling
well,
sword.
so far.
So far.
Other tests might surprise you.
Maybe it's good against everything except for the Longsword. Maybe. So this concludes the experiment with the long swords.
It ran the gauntlet, how to do.
Not well.
It went about, so I was expecting to do a little better. I didn't expect it to even win, but I didn't expect it to be so one-sided against complex hilts.
Yes, and that's the big thing here. And there's a reason that people move towards complex hilts with swords. We have to remember the context of this weapon. It really was a battlefield sidearm that then was adopted for some civilian use. It wasn't a dueling weapon, though it did later evolve into this style of dueling that we see with Meyer and all of them. But that wasn't necessarily like its original purpose.
Yeah, and it was against like.
Like against like. It wasn't really doing... and if it was going to be on the battlefield, you'd probably have quite a bit of protection.
Yeah.
So what we're doing Blossfechten, which is what dueling is, which is unarmored combat against another opponent with, same, well, it doesn't have to be same weapons, but it did very well against the Messer, it did very well against the Katana, both of them did terrible against the small sword.
Yeah, I think if this has a general edge against anything without complex hilts, the moment you put on a complex hilt, this has so much distance to gain, it's a losing fight.
I think side sword's comparable enough to rapier that we don't need to do that.
Yeah, I mean, there's to get into the whole thing, side sword and rapier.
Well, we can also expand this. If the series does well, we can start adding other weapons into it.
If the side sword is a more arming sword with less hand pro, this will win. If it's more rapier with more hand pro, this won't.
Yeah, it did. I was honestly impressed with the saber.
Yeah.
I did not think the saber was going to do that well against the longsword, but it did very well.
Yeah, because of that complex hand protection. If you don't have to worry about your hands, I have to move you to act as a deep target, and you have no reason to respect my shallow threats.
Out of all the pair-ups, what was the most one-sided?
Messer, it had no shot.
What about Katana? Which one was more one-sided?
They were equal.
Equal?
They were equal.
Equal. And then, well, the rapier kind of again.
So for this winning,
Messer or katana.
losing
Rapier by a lot.
Yeah.
By a lot. It was bad. So with all of that said, this is the first part of the experiment, and we are going to run the gauntlet on every other sword that you saw here. So next week we'll have another sword that'll run the gauntlet, and we will finally conclude.
Run the gauntlet.
Oh, don't break that.
It's my glove.
It's your glove. This is why we don't have nice things. We will decide what is the ultimate dueling sword. Like, follow, subscribe, all that nonsense, and we'll see you in the next battle. Thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video because we really enjoyed making it. With that said, this has been one of the hardest videos to work on because of all the moving parts, the hit trackers, the individual sparring footage editing, and everything else. After everything is said and done, between filming and editing, I probably put 15 hours into this video. And I'm able to do that because of the support of you, the viewers, and those people you're seeing on screen right now, our Patreon subscribers. If you want to help us make this content, please consider supporting the channel for $1 on Patreon. It's a huge, huge deal. Thanks, and see you in the next episode of the series.